The divorce papers felt heavier than the suitcase packed with designer clothes. Elena didn't look at Mark. She couldn't bear to see the heartbreak in the eyes of the man who had worked 2 jobs just to put her through business school. Instead, she adjusted her silk blazer, fixing her gaze on the luxury sedan idling quietly at the curb. "He can give me the world, Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling despite the coldness she tried to maintain. "You can barely give me a weekend off." Mark stood in the doorway of their cramped apartment, his hands stained with engine oil. "I gave you everything I had, Elena. Is Marcus Thorne really worth 10 years of us?" "He's my future," she snapped, turning sharply on her heel. "You're just my history." Welcome, story lovers. Before we begin, hit like and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. She didn't look back as the car door shut, sealing away the quiet sadness of the suburbs. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne International, wasn't just her boss. He was the escape she had dreamed about for years. He promised her a seat at the table, a life of influence, and a kind of love that didn't smell like grease and unpaid bills. As they drove toward the city's glittering skyline, Marcus reached for her hand. "Tomorrow is your first day as my executive vice president. A new life, new rules." "I'm ready," Elena said, though her heart pounded hard against her ribs. But when she stepped into the glass-walled lobby the next morning, the receptionist didn't hand her a badge. Instead, she gave her a sealed legal envelope. "Mr. Thorne is waiting in the basement archives, ma'am. He said your training begins where the secrets are kept." The elevator sank past the plush carpets and polished mahogany desks, finally stopping in a concrete basement that smelled of damp paper and cold ozone. Marcus stood under a flickering fluorescent light, his expensive suit looking strangely out of place against the rusted filing cabinets. He didn't smile. The warmth he had shown in the car had vanished, replaced by something sharp and calculating. "You wanted the view from the top, Elena," Marcus said, tossing the envelope onto a metal table. "But no one runs a kingdom until they understand how the bodies are buried. Open it." Her fingers trembled as she tore the seal. Inside weren't executive contracts or stock options. They were bank statements, Mark's bank statements. They showed massive monthly deposits into an account under her name, stretching back 3 years. "What is this?" she stammered, the cold of the concrete floor creeping into her bones. "Your husband wasn't just a mechanic, Elena. He was my lead auditor. He discovered I was siphoning funds from the pension board. I paid him to stay quiet." Marcus leaned closer, his shadow stretching over her. "He didn't keep the money for himself. He put every cent into an account for your future. He traded his integrity for your dreams." The room spun around her. Mark hadn't been poor. He had been sacrificing everything. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe now. More real, powerful moments like this are coming, and the next one is unforgettable. Why tell me this? "Now!" Elena whispered, nausea rising in her throat. Marcus gripped her chin firmly. "Because now you're the collateral. If you leave me, I release these records. Mark goes to prison for bribery, and you go down as his accomplice. You're not my VP, Elena. You're my insurance policy." Suddenly, the heavy steel door behind them groaned open. A shadow stretched across the floor. "The policy just expired, Marcus." A familiar voice echoed through the dim room. Mark stepped into the light, but he wasn't wearing his grease-stained coveralls. Instead, he wore a sharp charcoal suit and carried a digital recorder glowing with a steady red light. The shock struck Elena like a physical blow, leaving her breathless against the cold metal table. The man she had underestimated now stood, with calm authority. "Mark, how did you get in here?" Marcus demanded, quickly dropping his hand from Elena's chin as he tried to recover his composure. "You're trespassing on private property. Security will have you in handcuffs within minutes." Mark didn't flinch. "I didn't need to break in, Marcus. I still have the master key you gave me when you asked me to erase the digital trail of your offshore accounts. You forgot something. I've always been better at finding things than you were at hiding them. Elena's gaze moved between the they. Two men as the truth slowly settled in. The so-called bribery hadn't been generosity. It had been a trap. Mark hadn't been accepting the money to build her a future. He had been collecting evidence of Marcus's corruption. You used me, Elena whispered, staring at Marcus. You brought me here to use me as a shield against him. I brought you here because you chose glitter over gold, Elena, Marcus hissed. But Mark won't release anything. He loves you too much to see you behind bars. Mark stepped forward, his eyes meeting Elena's. I loved the woman I believed you were, but I love justice more. He tapped his phone, and a live video feed appeared showing police officers entering the lobby upstairs. Wait! Marcus shouted, lunging toward the recorder. The basement door slammed shut with a heavy metallic crash, the electronic lock clicking firmly into place. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into suffocating darkness. The police aren't the only ones here, Marcus, Mark's voice said from somewhere in the shadows, closer now. There's someone else you need to meet. Emergency lights suddenly flickered on, bathing the room in a slow crimson glow. Standing beside Mark was Sarah Thorne, Marcus's estranged wife, and the true majority shareholder of the company. In her hands was a tablet showing the real-time freezing of Marcus's personal assets. The board has already voted, Marcus, Sarah said calmly, her voice as cold as cracking ice. You were so busy playing God with Elena's life that you didn't notice Mark handing me the keys to your empire. We've been working together for months. Marcus sank weakly against a filing cabinet, the mask of the untouchable titan finally collapsing. He looked desperately at Elena, hoping to salvage some loyalty he believed he had purchased. Elena, tell them, he pleaded. Tell them you were part of it. You enjoyed the lifestyle. You're just as guilty. Elena stared at her hands, the same. Hands that had reached for silk while Mark worked long nights covered in oil. Slowly, she picked up the bank statements from the table and handed them to the lead officer who had just entered the room. I was a fool, Marcus, Elena said, her voice steady at last. But I'm not your shield. I'll testify to every lie you told me. I'd rather spend a year in a cell for my mistakes than a lifetime in a palace built on your cruelty. Mark watched her silently, his expression impossible to read. There was no romantic reunion, no dramatic embrace. The bridge she had burned between them was gone, and they both understood that. Justice was never a fairy tale. It was a reckoning. Marcus was escorted away into the shadows. Elena stepped out of the basement and into the sharp chill of the morning air. In that quiet moment, she realized that real power doesn't come from the person you stand beside, but from the truth you refuse to betray. Cruelty is loud, but self-respect is the quietest and strongest force in the world.